everybody. We're happy to be here for College Aid Pro office hours. I'm excited to be back with Rynda. I haven't seen her in like 3 weeks um, due to coaching 12-year-old football. So that's a whole nother story. But we're excited to be here and answer some questions about financial aid. We realize you guys are probably right in the middle of it. We're getting close to October 1st and the CSS profile opening. So we're happy to take some questions. Normally, I would have a disclaimer slide, but I've seemed to either deleted it or misplaced it. So you're going to get a verbal disclaimer this evening. We are not offering financial, investment, tax, legal advice on any of this. We're doing the best we can to answer your questions honestly based on the amount of information you've given us. If there's any omitted information, our answers could change. But hopefully that's enough to get you started. And I will hand it off to Rynda to allow her to introduce herself, and then I will pop back in and tell you who I am, and we'll get going. Rynda, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Glad to be back. The last office hours was occurred on Labor Day, so we didn't have it. So it's been a while. But yeah, glad to be back here. If you're new, I'm Rynda Wilk, one of the pros here at College Aid Pro, and we are thick in the middle of helping families build their college list and starting to think about filling out CSS profiles. But let's see, you want to know a little bit about me. I have two kids, 17 and 19 years old. We were just talking about my oldest, who's at Gannon University this year. So I have recently gone through this process and doing it again this year myself as a mom. So I certainly understand your position as parents, if we have any parents out there. So yeah, let us know what your questions are. Remember to put your questions in the Q&A as you have them. Go ahead and start entering questions anytime. Dan?
I'm Chuck Bates. I'm one of the
Dan.
pros here as well. That's all
I'm
right,
sorry,
Dan.
Chuck.
I don't mind at all. Dan, I consider it an honor. Dan's smarter and more handsome than me, so we'll just roll with that. But I'm Chuck Bates. I'm one of the College Aid pros. I'm a financial advisor down in Houston. I also have two kids. They're a little bit younger, but mine also got me into this line of business. I'm a foster parent and adopted a little boy, and in that process, we found out that kids coming out of Child Protective Services in Texas get tuition waivers at in-state universities, and that's originally what got me interested in this and down the road of learning about all this. So that's just a little bit of how I got here, but we'd love to help everybody. Hopefully you have all already got profiles and access to MyCap, the software we use to do a lot of our work. And if you have questions on how to use that, we can also answer those as we're going. But feel free to start firing off some questions into the Q&A. All right, we got the first one. You want to go, Rynda?
Sure, let's do it here. Let's see. We got the question. If planning to use the data retrieval tool to import IRS tax forms for the 24-25 FAFSA and have no rollovers and not amending tax return, why would an IRS tax transcript be needed? If needed, it appears would have to register with ID.me to request. Well, actually, this year, you're basically going to be forced to use the data retrieval tool. It's not going to be an option anymore. And I suspect that the request for you to submit tax returns is going to kind of go away because of that. I don't foresee them asking for that very much. However, when you are submitting your CSS profile, you may, in fact, be requested to enter your tax returns for sure. What do you think about that, Dan? Dan, why don't you keep saying Dan?
It's all right.
It's such a habit. Chuck.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And the only thing I would add is ID.me is just a separate like identity verification tool. You have to use it if you use the Social Security website and download your like earnings history and different things like that. So I wouldn't worry about the registering with ID.me part of it. It is a pain or an extra step, but other than that, I agree with everything Rynda said.
We have another question.
Yep. My daughter has a savings account. Is there a certain amount that won't count against her for FAFSA? And if it is her account is over the amount, should we move the money to a grandparent? So I need to look up that uh asset waiver number, but I want to say it's around 8,000, but I'm not exactly sure. But anything in a student's name is going to be assessed at a higher rate than a parent's rate in terms of assets above the I'm drawing a blank on the word, but the buffer. They give the student a certain amount. I'll look it up and tell you the exact number while we're talking on the next question. In terms of moving it, I mean, you could use it for expenses. You could potentially move it. If it's just a checking account, again, it doesn't count until the day you complete the FAFSA application. So it's not something that needs to be addressed today. Rynda, do you have anything to add on that?
So I know that for this year, the income allowance for the student is over $9,000. That applies to like work income and things like that. For assets, I haven't seen an allowance for that this year, but I know Chuck is looking it up for us. And I will go on to the next question while he does that. For the CSS profile, should we include social security numbers and why? Confirm to not fill out non-required info on CSS profile. That's correct. So to the second part of that, if you're filling out the CSS and the question is not marked required, then feel free to skip it. If they want to know really badly, they'll come back and ask you for that information. And then you can, have a dialogue with the school. Hopefully that's asking for it. If the social security number, that's how the social security number is used to track you through a lot of different processes in this country. And so as far as I know, it's probably marked required. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I suspect that it is, and obviously you'd have to fill it out or else you wouldn't be able to move forward in that case.
Okay. And Rynda is exactly right. The asset protection allowance was eliminated in the 23-24 FAFSA. So the income one is still there that she mentioned, but the asset protection allowance was eliminated for the 23-24. There is one question in the chat I'm going to take a swing at and then encourage everybody not to put your questions in the chat. Please use the Q&A. It gets recorded. So again, I didn't say this up front, but everybody will get a copy of this recording so that you'll be able to listen to it or watch it again. So the question is a non-custodial parent tax return required for FAFSA and CSS? What impact will it be if a non-custodial parent refuses to provide tax return? So the rule is technically the parent who provides the most financial support. It's no longer the custodial parent. So again, if one parent provides 51% of the financial support, that's the parent who should supply the information from their taxes. What impact will it be if a non-custodial parent refuses to provide the tax return? I'm going to give you an it depends answer, and you'll have to deal with each school independently and see what they say. Some may be more forgiving about it, and some may be very persistent in requiring it. So I think it's going to depend on the schools you're considering.
All right, thank you. So going back to the Q&A here, I'm sure this is a case by case, but do you have any experience with a family that lives in a rented home, has an investment property, which was formerly a primary residence, and plans to move back to the investment property as soon as the nest is empty? Well, what I would say in a case like that is that the equity in that investment property, assuming that it's not either way, even if it were just a second home or if you're renting it or not, it's still considered an investment right now. I don't know how quickly you are planning to move back into it. But if you can do something where you can legitimately say, this is now our main home, then, you don't have to include that equity on the FAFSA. It is kind of I think that's more of a details of the case. I would want to know a lot more about that situation to be able to give a more complete answer.
And I did want to go back to the non-custodial parent question, because it did ask for FAFSA and CSS. For the CSS schools, it will vary school by school. You can look at this link. I'll put it in the chat for everyone. The second to last column tells how CSS schools handle non-custodial parents. So slightly different points. So sorry for leaving that out. The next question in the Q&A, we filed a joint tax return for 2022, now legally separated in 2023. Will the new FAFSA for 24-25 force us to use the IRS data retrieval tool? Current 23-24 won't allow us to use the IRS data retrieval tool. I guess the short answer is I'm not comfortable answering this for certain until the FAFSA is actually open. But again, we expect people will be forced to use the data retrieval tool. And in this case, it would be the parent who provides 51% of or more financial support. But again, until it's actually live and we know for sure, I take it with a grain of salt. Rynda, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you sat in it as well, Chuck, but in the walkthrough that I sat in a few weeks ago with the new FAFSA, I mean, they did kind of say several times, and this was asked over and over in different ways, and the answer was you're going to be required to use the data retrieval tool. In a case like this where there's been a separation since 2022, I feel, we haven't, like Chuck said, we don't know for sure how all these things are going to play out with the new FAFSA, but this may end up being a conversation with each school where you have to go back in some kind of an appeals process, or to communicate with the schools, especially if the new situation makes you more likely to get need-based aid. I would definitely take the time to do that.
That's a great explanation.
All right, so let's see. Confirm pricing of house for CSS profile. Oh, okay. Use federal housing calculator link. And can everybody see this link in the QA?
I don't know, but I can paste it into the chat real quick. So this is the Federal Housing Authority website. I didn't mean to cut you off, Rynda. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Federal Housing Authority. So basically, all it does is calculate a value from the time you bought the house till now, based on the county you live in. So like it'll ask a question, what state are you in? What metro area? When did you buy the house? And it will give you an approximate value based on like the property value around it. So I guess the thing I would say is you only want to use that value if it's the lowest starting value you can find. So if Zillow's lower or your appraisal is lower, or you have some other third right answer, you'd want to take the lowest one. And then whatever the lowest one is, I would say you'd want to use the IRS quick sale rule that allows you to discount it an additional 20%. So that would be my opinion on that question.
Yep, I totally agree. All right. Okay, planning to move. Oh, okay. I think this is back to the situation with the person who has the house that they're not living in now, but planning to move back to. It says planning to move even before the kid starts college. Do we think the school financial aid office will be open to hear the call? I'm not sure how to interpret that last phrase. I assume you mean for you to make an appeal about that, or I would say, let's see, if you're, so this is not going to matter much for the CSS because you're going to include the equity either way. So this is mostly pertaining to the FAFSA, which we know already is not going to be available before December. And since we don't have a specific date, it is possible they will kick it even further down the road than that. So, again, not knowing, I'm assuming that you are not planning to move back into the house before that, because if you were, then this would be a moot point. So if you're still having renters in there, because technically you submit the value of your assets as of the day you submit the FAFSA. So one thing, I don't generally encourage people to submit the FAFSA later. I mean, we generally like you to get it in as quickly as possible, but if it's not too much later and you could submit it after the renters had moved out, if that's the case, then I would do that. And that would be a pretty easy sell to me to say, hey, this is now our primary home. It's a hard sell if there are renters in there. That being said, I don't know that there are any checks for this, except that if it shows up on your tax return, which it wouldn't, because they're going to be looking at your 2022 tax return. So there's a lot of gray area in this situation. I think to give you a definite answer, we would still need to have a one-on-one conversation, I feel.
And if anybody does need to have more time with an expert, I'll just show you real quick. I'll share my screen. Can everybody see my screen, Rynda? Can you see it all right?
I can see it.
Yep. So right up here in the upper right is the Talk to an Expert button. You can click on that at any time if you have detailed or in-depth questions that you might need help with. You can choose from a drop down of amazing experts. Rynda and myself are in there, but there's plenty of other people that will all be able to help you. So if you need help with that, that's the easiest way to do that. All right. Is there a cutoff for a family to qualify for need-based aid, federal student loans if 529 savings and retirement savings and other assets exceed a certain level? I guess that there's a lot of stuff I don't know in that question, but what I will say is I think it always makes sense to complete the FAFSA, and that the biggest part of that is going to be determined by the federal formula of cost of attendance minus SAI equals need. So without knowing your SAI, if a school costs $90,000 and you had a SAI of 80,000, you'd still be eligible for 10,000 of needs. So I don't think I guess I would encourage you to complete the FAFSA no matter what, and keep in mind that by completing it, you might also have some eligibility for merit-based scholarships and different things at different schools. And there's just a lot of benefits to doing it should you have a change in your personal financial situation. So I don't think there's anything negative to come from it, but that's just my opinion.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so let's see. This person says, I heard FAFSA is bringing back asset protection for older parents. Is this true?
I haven't heard that. I mean, this is anecdotal, and I don't know where you heard that, but all I know is, several years ago, the asset protection was, call it like 10,000 or 80,000 for somebody over 60 years old, and it's been shrinking consistently for a long time. So I don't think that it's coming back. I think they've been intentionally trying to do away with it. But again, I could have missed something and not be aware, but I'm pretty confident, I guess, is my answer.
I think there is still a little bit of asset protection for the parents based on, let me see. Sorry, looking it up in real time.
Yeah,
but
it was $9,500 in 2021.
Yeah, so 10,500 is what I'm seeing in 24, 25. So I'm not sure if this person just thought that when we said there wasn't for the student that we were talking about the parents or something else.
if you know where you saw that or read it and don't mind putting it in the chat, we'd appreciate it. Thank you for your open thoughts. You're welcome. All right. Early decision is binding. If accepted, the student is supposed to go. What happens if college comes back with a bigger cost of attendance compared to the net price calculator? Can a student reject ED saying his family can't afford it? Yeah, I mean, basically that's the only reason you can break a early decision contract is for financial reasons. But I would encourage you not to know what you're getting into before you apply ED, I guess is what I would say. There, if they come back with a higher cost of attendance compared to their net price calculator, I'd be kind of surprised. But I'd want to make sure you run that and have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost you before you apply early decision.
Sorry, I'm kind of zoning out here. I was looking for the chart for that asset protection allowance question to get, because it is based on the age of the oldest parent. So I was trying to look for the chart for that, but I didn't put my hands on it quite yet. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah.
I plan to start on the CSS profile once it opens October 1. Good. I know the FAFSA won't open this year until December 1 or later. They haven't said that it was going to be December 1, but sometime in December. Okay. Is it harmless to create a FAFSA account now so that we can look at the questions, or should we wait until after the new FAFSA comes out December 1? Go ahead and look at the questions, but they will be different. There are a lot fewer questions this year. And this person has a high school senior. So what I would encourage you to do, no matter what, is in which you can do now or anytime between now and December, is go ahead and apply for your FSA ID. Do you know the link to the page?
Yep. I got it.
Want to put it in there? Thank you. You'll need an FSA ID for the student and for at least one parent. And that's basically how you sign, electronically sign your FAFSA. And it takes a couple of days for that to go through because they ask you some questions and you have to they want to know that you are who you say you are, basically. So it takes a little bit of time for them to verify your answers on the back end. But as far as, I encourage you to get a good idea of what's kind of the basics of what's on the FAFSA. Go to MyCap and fill out your profile, and that will calculate your federal student aid index and help you get a really good idea of what you're looking at in terms of the FAFSA for this year. So that's mycap.collegeaidpro.com. If you haven't opened, you can create a free account and do that and get your SAIs, student aid indexes. So do that. And if you want more information, definitely, whatever you can access online doesn't hurt. It's not yet. It just, there's a blog post I will put in. I'll do it while you're answering the next question, Chuck, but that I wrote about the changes that are occurring. So you might want to read that and make sure that anything you're doing in terms of research, that hey, if it was written earlier than the past year, it might have some outdated information. So you'll know how to spot that.
Okay, so just a reminder, please make sure and put your questions in the Q&A. Looks like we had another one come in the chat. It says, can one family have two primary residence properties that are required to report in FAFSA? What is the requirement under CSS profile? Well, I'm not sure I understand that, but the simple answer is you only have one primary residence. That's where you live the majority of the time. Anything else would be an additional property or asset, and it would be counted. So if there's something specific to that makes you think it's multiple residents can be primary, let me know. But as far as I know, you can only have one primary residence, and everything else would be just an additional asset that you need to report. And then somebody replied, the asset protection. They heard it on a webinar from CollegeWise, one of our competitors, but they're very good. So it's possible that's accurate, although I'm looking at table 7, education savings and asset protection allowance for parents only for the 23-24 FAFSA formula, and all the way to age 65, the allowance is 0. So, and I don't think the 24-25 formula has been released yet, but I'm not sure. So again, might be hard to say. All right. Plan to start on the CSS profile once it opens October 1st. I know the FAFSA won't open until December 1st. We think December. We don't necessarily know that it'll be December 1st. Oh, you already answered this one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I already answered.
Yeah, no, all good, all good. Is there ever reason not to complete the FAFSA? If FAFSA is not open until December, how can you determine need-based aid for purposes of applications that are submitted early before December? Well, that's great. One, it's a two-part question. One, I don't think there's ever a reason not to complete the FAFSA. I think everybody should do it. In fact, I live here in Houston, Texas, and the state of Texas requires every family to complete it or sign a waiver for their student to graduate. So yes, I think you should always do it. Second, if you need to determine need-based aid before the purpose of applications are submitted, then my suggestion would be use our wonderful MyCap software. I'll share our screen one more time real quick.
And while you're pulling that screen up, I will say if you're thinking about, and for this question, if you're thinking about the process of applying to the school and how are they going to assess your need after you submit your early decision application, some of those schools will probably be asking for the CSS profile and use that in order to make aid decisions. For, if there are schools where you're applying early decision that don't use the CSS profile, then you're going to need to get on their applications website, possibly call your admissions counselor if you're confused about it, and find out how they're specifically going to handle it this year.
Yep. And so if you're using the MyCap software, as long as you complete your profile, if you go into your profile and it says 100% complete, you will get your SAIs up here, and you can compare it to any school to determine if you might be eligible for need-based aid. So this is a account that I've mocked up for my family and my daughter. And in this case, if you look at Austin College, you could see she might be eligible for $31,000 in need-based grants and $28,000 in scholarships. So I would highly encourage you to use this tool. We have a lot of confidence in our SAI and our calculations. They're very good. And then since I'm on this page, I do want to add one thing because I see a second follow-up question from a different person. It says, CAP used to have 3 SAIs and now we're down to 2. That's primarily because the consensus method, the biggest difference is how they calculate home equity and how liquid they consider it. So now you'll notice there's a range, and we've tied in each school's unique assessment of home equity to the school. So that's the biggest reason that we're down to 2. There's the federal and now the institutional, and the institutional has a range based on how we believe that school treats home equity. So I hope that answers those 2 questions. Rynda, anything to add on those?
I would say just with that range, we feel like it's a better answer to what your institutional, your SAI is, because even among schools that just asked for the CSS profile that were formerly in that middle category of institutional methodology, we had one number there, but each school might have a little bit different calculation that they used. And so, our SAI that we're reporting there really didn't reflect the fact that different schools were calculating your SAI different ways, even outside of the consensus methodology schools. So that's all I would say about that. did we answer this? Okay, is only the FAFSA changing for the 24-25 school year and not the CSS profile? If correct, in that case, parents can play around with CSS profile for 23-24 school year, and it will be easy to fill out 24-25 CSS profile, right? Thank you. Yeah, we don't ever know for sure what changes might be on the CSS profile, but we don't expect them to have nearly like the number of changes that the FAFSA is having this year. So I would say if you can look at the current CSS profile and play around with that to get, an idea of what the questions look like, there's certainly no reason not to do that if it gives you some peace of mind knowing that you're prepared, right, with all the information you're going to need to answer the questions.
And just remember, our fairy godmother of financial aid, Peg, does a line by line recording of each application once they come out and become available. So I would say, watch that video and pay attention. And on the CSS profile, the only thing I'd add is they do occasionally make changes. Like last year, there was about 6 or 8 different fields that were previously not required that all of a sudden they made you put in an answer to before you could continue. So like Rynda said, we don't really know, and you just kind of have to go through and see what looks different.
And it won't be long.
No.
Use the real thing. Okay, somebody's asking if there's a coupon code. I assume that's for MyCap. I don't know. Do you?
I don't know the answer, but try OH15, office hours 15, and I think that might give you a 15% discount. But I'm not positive. If it doesn't work, you can email support@collegeaidpro.com and ask if there's any current coupon codes available. I should know the answer to that, so I apologize. All right. Am I to understand that I create a FAFSA? Just did that, and my student does also. So no, you need to create a FSA ID. So it's just an ID that allows you to essentially sign the FAFSA document when you complete it. So there's one FAFSA, but 2 people sign it and they use separate FSA IDs. Am I articulating that correctly?
Yeah, but I will say I think that this year that process is also going to be a little bit different in that, if I remember correctly, the student will have control over their FAFSA, and they will invite the parent to fill out information, the information they need to fill out. So I think there are going to be changes. If you've done the FAFSA in the past, you might notice that it's different this year in terms of how the parent and the student fill out their information. But you're absolutely correct. The FSA ID is what we were talking about, that both the student and one parent need to create and can create before the FAFSA becomes available.
And I think Brenda just made a great point. One thing we kind of overlook a lot is, these deadlines for financial aid or scholarships and different things are all really important and paramount to getting your job done. And most of the time, the schools will only communicate with the students. So, if you're a parent who's actively involved in this process, you may want access to your kid's email, or you may want to sit down and check those emails with them on a regular basis, because again, they're only going to typically communicate with the student and not include the parents on those. So that's something to think about.
And then we just had someone ask, sorry, but she needs to complete an FSA 2. Yes, the student needs their own FSA ID. Do I have her do that, or does her school initiate that? Whether the school initiates it or you do, it doesn't matter much, but she does need to have one. So what I would say is it doesn't hurt for you to go ahead and have her do it, create hers, and then she'll have it. If the school wants her to do it, she can say, hey, I've already done it. And if you don't want to take that route, just make sure that it happens, before the last minute. The reason you don't want to do this at the last minute is because, like I said, it takes a few days to get everything set up. And so you don't want to be sitting there ready to sign your FAFSA and realize, oh no, I didn't do the FSA ID and now I've got to put it off, and it's just nice to get it done.
One thing to add to this, each FSA ID is going to require a unique email address. And I really encourage everybody to make sure you're using an email address that you'll have access to perpetually. You don't want to use your high school email address only to have it disappear the day after you graduate. So, use a Gmail or a Yahoo or something, and make sure it's appropriate for professional use and not something like Chubby Bunny 37 or whatever. Keep it as simple as possible, and make sure you can have access to it over a long period of time.
Good point.
Are we just that amazing that we've wiped out all the questions this evening, or are you guys shy and afraid to ask more? Okay, here we go. So the FAFSA requires a FSA ID. Does the CSS profile have something similar? It's just a College Board account, right? I mean,
yeah, it's not the same as the FSA ID. I mean, okay.
I'm gonna let you take this because I don't know what CSS actually stands
Somebody's
for.
asking, should they create a CSS profile? It is a CSS profile, and what does it stand for? I have no idea what it stands for. Bonus points to whoever can find that. But it is a College Board financial application that only certain schools require. Did you come up with it, Chuck?
College Scholarship Service.
There you go. Good deal. And so you only need to do that if you're applying to schools that require the CSS. There's about, I don't know, 250 schools now in the US that require it. So if the schools you're applying to aren't on the list of CSS schools, there's no reason for you to do it. And trust me, you don't want to if you don't have to, because it is a bear.
All right. My son plans to apply early decision to a CSS college. Do we think we'll get around to filling out the FAFSA? Yeah, I guess I hope I'm not missing something with this question, but you'll complete the CSS profile in October when it opens. And then as soon as December rolls around and they roll out the FAFSA, you'll want to complete it as well. Now, you may very well get your ED acceptance back before you get your financial aid award. And you may have to wait till kind of spring break to know what that financial aid award is. But yeah, you'll definitely want to fill it out right when it becomes available.
I would say it's possible, since in this circumstance, they will be doing the CSS, that you might get a financial award, but they're still going to want you to complete the FAFSA. Even if they've already told you what the financial award is. I honestly, I don't like, it is really a school by school thing. I encourage you to get on the school's website, read everything they have in their application site, admissions portal or admissions site, because they may answer this question in there. And if they don't, you're going to want to probably reach out to them and find out what their process is going to be this year. Is it true? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to take this other one since it's a follow-up to you just closed the one I was going to answer. It's all right. The basic question was back to the 2 residences in different states. Do you have to claim them? So again, I can't stress this enough. I'm pretty confident there is only one primary residence, and they're not going to let you straddle 2 states and potentially get in-state tuition in 2 states. You're going to have to claim one of those as your primary residence, and the second one is essentially like an investment or an asset, and it will ask you for the valuation of other real estate assets, things like that. So if you have 2 homes, one will be your primary residence and one will be an asset. And if they're in different states, you're not going to be able to arbitrarily choose which one is your primary residence. They're probably going to require some kind of support to show which one you're living in as your primary residence. So again, it could change school to school like a lot of other things, but I'm pretty confident that that's how it's going to go.
I know that for my son, we were talking to Penn State, and he graduated high school in Florida, but he legitimately is moving to Pennsylvania, and so he was trying to find out if he could get in-state tuition, and they flat out told him, we assume that your residence is the state that you went to high school in, and if it's not, then you have to prove it, right? Anything other than that, you have to convince us.
Yeah. And a lot of schools have, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rynda, but like very specific, like you have to, even if you move there in your senior year, you have to live there a year or 18 months or whatever before you can be granted residency. So,
yep. Okay. Sorry for deleting a question on you, Chuck. The next one is it true ED, early decision, has a bigger admin rate? Does it mean EA or regular applicants are at a disadvantage at highly selective schools? The data I have seen on that is a higher percentage of kids who apply early decision do get accepted than the percentage that apply regular decision or early action. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision for you to apply early decision. That is based on your financial situation and your college goals and stuff. So, but it might be a leg up from an admission standpoint.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add on that. So. All right. This is from Vanderbilt Early Decision. November 2, 2023, priority filing deadline for CSS profile application. December 1st, deadline for merit scholarship applications. Mid-December, preliminary financial aid offers available. This is why I'm wondering whether they will ask us to do the FAFSA form later. Yes, they're going to ask. Well, I shouldn't say it with such confidence, but I'm highly confident that you're going to be required to do the FAFSA as soon as it becomes available, and that they're encouraging you to complete the CSS profile before November 2nd. So yeah, but definitely give them a call. That's always the safest route.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is some money may come to you from the federal government, and at the very least, by filling out the FAFSA, then your student is eligible to take federal student loans, which is in part of the award package for almost every student at every school. So it would be very unusual for them not to require the FAFSA.
Yeah, that's a great point. Without completing the FAFSA, you're not eligible for the federal direct student loans, which are typically the lowest cost, most effective student loans. And if those are use it or lose it loans. So if you don't apply your freshman year, you can't get those dollars back your sophomore, junior, or senior year if you ultimately have to borrow. So another great point, Rynda. Let's say student accepted in an ED school. You won't pull out of other colleges until you receive and accept a financial aid offer from an ED school. Is that right? I can't tell you how you're going to handle that. Again, if you're accepted ED, it's a binding commitment, and typically the only reason you would break that is for financial reasons. So,
Yeah, I would say there's no reason to pull out from other schools anyway until the spring. Give yourself the full time to make the decision if you can. But once you make your deposit and you've accepted that you're going to pay and go to the ED school, then you can have plenty of time to back out from any other schools where you've been accepted or applied. Okay. I haven't investigated information about your software, so don't want to start asking questions without first looking at your website. Does your website provide good information? And if we have follow-up questions, should we email support@collegeaidpro.com? Um, so yes, our website has excellent information. I can tell you that not only as a college planning professional, I would not be able to do my job effectively without it, first of all, but also as a parent. I've told this story many times, but when my son was a senior in high school, my oldest, I was like, okay, I know how to do this with College Aid Pro. I'm going to see what it's like for families who try to do it without College Aid Pro. And I started my search just, with Google basically, and trying to use other websites and research schools with him, and trying to figure out, okay, if you wanted to go to this school or that school, how much would we likely have to pay? I filled out a ton of net price calculators, did everything I could do, and my head was spinning so much from that. It was so painstaking, and I just felt like I wasn't ever getting answers. I wasn't ever clear. And when I said, okay, forget that, I'm going back to College Aid Pro and do it the right way that I know how to do it, that was just, it was such a relief when I kind of gave up on that little experiment, because yes, College Aid Pro will help you see how much each individual school is likely to offer you from both need-based and merit-based standpoint. Not only that, but how much you're looking at paying for all 4 years, and what your student loan payments will likely look like if your student has to borrow, more than your college budget, which it helps you calculate. It has a scholarship list. It has all the merit scholarships at all the schools in the US. So yeah, it's an amazing tool. So I highly encourage you, if you do nothing else with the services that we offer at College Aid Pro, at least you will be glad that you did it if you sign up for the MyCap tool.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually going to share my screen and show you something just because. So do you see my screen right now? Is it
Yep.
show Auburn, Austin College? All right, so you can click on Austin College, see what scholarships are there, which ones you get, and it's in a nice, easily readable format, right? You can look at it. Otherwise, you're going to have to go Google something called the Common Data Set and scroll through here to find out how they give their aid, what percent of need they meet, how many people get scholarships. And if you look at this, I mean, it's a 35-page Word document. So that would be, in theory, the competitor to this product. So it's great information. And the last thing I want to add, only email support@College Aid Pro if you're already a client and using the software and have a problem with it. The one exception is what I said about the discount code coupon for today and today only. So if they get a bunch of emails asking about it, they're going to call me because I'm the one who said it, and I'll explain what I said. But otherwise, just use that if you're a software user, please.
Yeah, that's kind of our support team for when technology's not doing what we think it ought to do. We cleaned out the questions again. I don't know, Chuck.
I like it. We'll give it
Oh, is it
yeah.
okay? Someone's asking, is MyCap up to date for the new changes? And yes, it is. It is.
Let's see if there's anything else I can think of that we should be covering. I really can't think of anything to add. We got 10 minutes. We'll stay on the line for like 2. And if we don't get any questions in the next 2 minutes, we'll call it an early night and hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
Yeah, I will say, since we've got a couple minutes while we wait, see if any more questions come in, CSS profile is getting ready to open up. If you think you're going to be applying to CSS schools, I encourage you to get it done in the month of October and just have it over with. Also, whether or not you're applying early decision, early action, or regular decision, it's okay to go ahead and get those applications in and be done with that. And, get in on the front end of all of the application season. Not only will you be happy and your student be happy to have it all behind you, other than the FAFSA, but these schools that use endowment money to give award aid, they only use a certain amount every year and it will run out. And so the early bird does sometimes get the worm. So
Got a late question. What's the average amount of schools students are applying to now? I can't speak to averages, but my suggestion is to between 10 and 15 schools you would legitimately consider going. It should be a nice mix of both public and private, and it should be schools that compete for your type of student. So whatever makes your student unique, you want to apply to schools that would be competing for him or her, and use that as leverage to negotiate better deals, better appeals, and more savings.
I see something just okay. Separated parents fill out the CSS profile on different user IDs, right? And include their saving and checking account balance. It does matter if one parent has more amount in savings and when other parents are doing CSS profiles. Okay, so when you have a 2-household family situation with the CSS profile, they're definitely what you will do is similar to what I was talking about earlier with the FAFSA we think is starting to do, where the parent gets invited to complete their information. The same thing with CSS, the student and the custodial parent fill out their information, and the platform asks you enough questions to know that the other household needs to also fill out their information, ask for their contact information, and we'll send them an invitation. So the 2 households have their own account. Neither one can see the information of the other one, so everything's confidential. I think that was the gist of that question. Did I leave anything out, Chuck?
No, I think you got it.
Not sure I understood the part about it does matter if one parent has more amount in savings.
I mean, they're going to count however they say they assess it in that CSS participating institution will determine if both parents get counted or not. It's a yes or no kind of binary question. And it will tell you basically, the custodial parent is the one who's submitting it. So yeah, I don't know if they require both, it's going to have an impact, but if they don't, it's not, if I understand the question. All right, we have a pretty in-depth one here. Let's see if we can make heads or tails of this. Care to comment on this? I'd love a resource that shows the multiple for each school. I'm not sure what the multiple is. Is that built into CAP? How does this looks like a quote from somewhere? I don't know if it's, how does the calculation for home equity work? Well, that changes school to school. I can tell you that much for sure. I believe we have over 10 different home equity calculations in the software. And when you run some reports, at least in the advisor version I use, where I help multiple families, it will explain which formula, I guess is what I would call it, it's using. And then it goes on to say a percentage of the family's total income referred to as the assessment rate, a possible cap ceiling amount at which point the total amount added to the asset assessment rate is frozen without any increase regardless of the net equity amount and or the income amount. I think that's referencing that the higher your income goes up, potentially the more they're going to assess the home equity in some cases. But I don't want to take a swing at that. I feel like there's too much information I'm missing. If you want to say where you pulled that quote from, or put a link, I'll take a look at it. But other than that, I think I'm going to have to pass. You
Yeah,
got
in general, like Chuck said, each school chooses how much they want to assess home equity, and my cap knows what the calculation should be and factors that into your data for each school. So if you're using the MyCap tool, then you don't necessarily need to know how each school is doing it, because it's already factored in there for you. I would say trying to get that information and use it for a lot of different schools would be very tedious. I don't even know where I would start. Okay. How do you find which is a competitive school? We get this question a lot. So I think this person is probably referring to our suggestion that if you're applying to one school, that if you should also apply to one of its competitors, and then in the spring, when you're appealing for a better aid package, you can kind of pit them against each other, to try to get more aid. Say, hey, well, I really wanted to go to school A, but school B is one of your competitors. Well, you wouldn't tell them that. But they offered me more aid. And so now it's making it really hard for me to make a decision, et cetera. We do whole webinars on how to appeal. There's definitely a right way and a wrong way to do that. So the way to set yourself up for being able to make that kind of an appeal is to apply to competing schools now. And schools that are competitive sometimes they're going to be like the same athletic conferences. They're probably going to have similar makeup in terms of what majors they offer, like liberal arts to liberal arts, or STEM school to STEM school, that kind of a thing. They're probably similar in makeup in other ways, like their size, and maybe in a general within the same geographic area. But you don't always know who the major competitors are going to be, so you kind of have to make a judgment based on that. How do you suggest people do it, Chuck?
I mean, it's pretty similar to, or pretty much exactly what you said. Over time, I guess you just hear about schools that compete. I think like Case Western and Rensselaer Polytech, or just different ones you hear about. But really, I've found in the past that I've had successful appeals on schools that I didn't think were related at all. But obviously, the closer they're related or connected, the better your odds are. So, the sports conference, if you look at any of the program listings, so like one I like to look at is Ruggs recommendations. If they fall into the same kind of most selective for chemical engineering, there's a chance that might be a good reference, stuff like that. That would be the only other thing I'd really add.
Yeah, and if you are going to try to use that strategy, make sure that competing school that you're going through, taking the effort to apply to, looks like it would give you a decent aid package. Don't bother if they're not giving out any aid that you would probably qualify for.
All right, so we have 1 minute to go, Rynda. You want to just take a pick from any of the remaining questions? And we apologize we can't get to them all, but we're excited they came in and kept us going.
Okay, I'm gonna just go for this one here. I haven't read it yet. My child has free tuition and fees at state schools due to father dying of service-related condition. She's pre-med and needs to manage finances for 14 years of post-grad education. As such, we are limiting her applications to 3 in-state and 2 private schools. That's not a question. I think they were commenting on your suggestion that 10 to 15 schools was a good number. But there are other situations, 10 to 15, that's a rule of thumb, but that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. So it's a good point.
And 14 years of post-grad education might be the most I've heard of. The one thing I would suggest there is, go to the lowest cost undergrad school you can that will successfully allow you to pursue that graduate course, because there's a lot less money as you progress through the graduate and degrees than there is in the undergrad, is how I would frame it. I
So
think.
yeah, go for that free tuition and fees at state schools. If I know, in Florida, certain students are guaranteed a position at a state school, not necessarily the one they want to go to, but if you're in the top 20% of your class, they guarantee you that you can have a spot at least one of the state schools. So.
All right. Well, we're officially 1 minute over. We appreciate you guys. Come back in 2 weeks. Save your questions if we didn't get to them, and we'll do our best to take a swing at them then.
All right.
Have a great evening.
Bye-bye,
Thanks, Rynda.
everybody.
You're the best.